but it was so special. Like when you were in that dressing room and the schedule came out, like everyone would run to the board to see when we were playing Detroit.
Yeah.
And it would be circled. And I mean literally circled. And it would sit in your stomach. It'd be like a month away and you'd look at it and be, oh, got that coming up.
Mm-hmm. Like Claude Lemieux, are you ready?
Yeah. Like but that's what it was like. You know, there's a little old school in the way I coach, but I'm tight with the players, but I have high expectations and we're honest and, but there's a little bit of grit to it, and trying to bring that out in some of these guys has been the fun part.
Another episode of the Block Party, powered by our amazing friends at Highlight IPA, Wolfie and Cody. And we are here on Veterans Day. That is where we're recording this episode on Veterans Day. So it only seems fitting that we have our new Lightning assistant coach, Dan Hinote, here with us. Dan, thank you so much for taking the time on a very busy day here to be with Kobe. Now, we really do appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's an honor to be here.
Now, I wanted to start things
honor.
on.
Did you hear that? An honor.
Yeah,
it is
a big deal.
Thank you.
It's a big deal.
Time, right?
It's a big deal.
I wanted to start on a quote high note because I actually delved into the meaning of the name Hinote, and I'm curious if you actually know the two distinct meanings of the name Hinote.
No, I've never done the research. I did know that it used to be two words,
Okay.
H-I-G-H,
Okay.
and note.
The word note.
Yeah, because it was Cherokee, it was American Indian.
Okay.
But
so the definitions that I found, it actually has a Japanese origin, which I think this is ironic, which means flame or blaze, or technically hand of fire, which kind of relates to lightning, which I thought was amazing.
Not a coincidence.
Not a coincidence. Or the French-German definition, which means young horse. So what a great tie as well for you in the NHL. I mean,
yes.
pretty amazing. I mean, Kobe and I like to dig when we get our guests.
Well,
on.
we should dig into the Cherokee meaning of it. That's kind of, I'm sure there's a meaning there as well.
We'll
What
have
did you
to.
find out?
I didn't.
Okay,
I
so
just
I
found
didn't-
out that it was two words.
Okay, so at least we've got some sort of the definition of that. But I wanted to, again, highlight the fact that we're recording this today here on Veterans Day because I found it was very interesting that you hold two firsts in the NHL. First being that you are the first NHL player to ever be drafted from West Point, and you were also the very first Florida-born player to ever score an NHL goal back in 1999-2000 when you got called up. So two milestones for you, but I wanted to touch more so on the West Point and the tie here with MacDill Air Force Base. We know that you sat down with Gabby Shirley when you first got here and got to chit-chat in at a hangar at MacDill Air Force Base. But just talk to us about why you chose to go to West Point, what your process in getting into playing hockey and how that whole process really started for you.
Yeah, so I was a second tier Minnesota hockey player. So in back when I was growing up, there was the first tier, which were the big boys, Eric Rasmussen, Mark Parrish, Matt Cullen, etc. And then the second tier was like myself, Wyatt Smith, Andy Lumbaum, like that, those types of guys. And so we garnered interest, like we didn't garner interest from University of Minnesota or St. Cloud or whatever. We would garner interest from teams from out of state.
Got it.
My grades were good, my testing was good. And I kind of wanted to go Ivy League. I wanted to go, ultimately, James Bond was my hero.
Okay.
So I was like, I want to be James Bond.
Why?
I just, you know what?
So you're a high school kid and you're like, James Bond's my hero.
That's it. So like
other guys
my
are like,
dad,
Wayne Gretzky, no, James Bond.
So a lot of my youth,
007.
yeah, exactly. A lot of my youth was watching movies, and my dad was a big movie guy.
Okay.
He was a big James Bond guy. So anyway, I just grew up watching James Bond, loving James Bond, and then being like, I want a license to kill. Like I want to go save the world.
Right.
And so I was like, what real job is that though? Like, well, you got special forces,
Navy SEALs.
Yeah. And then you have the FBI was kind of how I equated it, CIA or FBI.
Okay.
And so I was like, okay, I want to go in the FBI.
Okay.
Yeah. And my old man, the big chief. Yeah, well, no, I can't. I don't think I can say it on air. But anyway, he was like,
You can say it.
He's like, FBI, fucking big Indian. That's me. You know, like that was how he.
Yeah.
So anyway, when I told him I wanted the FBI, he's like, yeah, like me.
Okay.
And so anyway, I wanted to go FBI. The way I looked at it was getting into and going to West Point. You have to do the service part, which I was glad to do, and then that it should be an easy transition into the FBI.
Impressive.
And I was going to play as a freshman potentially, or at least have the opportunity. And it was going to, if I get in and get accepted and all the above, it would be free for my parents. And we didn't have a lot of money to pay for an Ivy League education. So it kind of fit on all ranges. And then, so that's how I ended up at West Point.
And so was that where you really kind of realized, you know what, I might be able to do this hockey thing as a profession as opposed to the FBI thing? Like, when did that click for you and realize that this might be the path I'm going to go?
Yeah, it never really did, because on my dad's radar, he was adamant I was going to play in the NHL his whole life. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'm not the best player on my high school team, so why don't we settle down a little bit? But you know, he gets his own dreams. Yeah,
of
that's
course.
Right. And so I'm playing hockey at West Point, and I get once every so often you get to call home, and it's pre-cell phone. So I called home, and my dad it was so funny because I remember the tone, because it was like, I told you so, instead of being excited. He's like, guess who I talked to this week? I was like, who? He's like, Colorado Avalanche called. They want to meet with you this summer. Just like I've been saying, basically.
Like, ultimate, I told you so.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, they called the house and blah, blah, blah. They want to meet you this summer. So I meet with them in the summer after my first year at West Point. And they're like, listen, if we draft you, would you be willing to leave? Like, we don't want to draft a player and then lose him to the war.
For sure.
And, so Mr. Draper was their head scout. They had seen me play we were playing half Division III, half Division I schedule at that point. So he had seen me against, I think, either Notre Dame or BU, one of our Division I teams that they were scouting. Then they just I came on their radar playing against the team they were scouting. So anyway, it comes to the visits the family in the summer. We say, yeah, like, let us talk about it, whatever. And he leaves and we're like, well, would we leave? Is that what we want to do? And my dad was, my dad was my hero. So it was, and my mom, but I was going to listen to what they had to say. Mm-hmm. And they were like, well, you can always go back to college.
Sure.
Like, you can always go back and get your education if that's what you're concerned about, if hockey doesn't work out. But hockey's like a small window. So let's try it. And I was like, okay. So anyway, still didn't really expect to get drafted, because it's just whatever. And I'm on a family vacation in Florida, fishing in the canal, because I knew it was draft day. I was nervous. Anyway, back then you had to call in if you weren't one of the top 3-4 rounds. You had to call in. Yeah, or maybe figure out, like, somebody was going to call you. But we were on vacation. So my mom, after the draft, calls the whatever, WCCO, whatever the radio station was in Minnesota. And it's like, hey, did Dan Hinote get drafted? And they're like, let me look. Anyway, they get to the 7th round. They're like, yeah, he did, by Colorado in the 7th round. So then it was like, oh my God, this is real now. And, still it's 7th round pick. Your chances aren't great, but it's worth a try.
For sure.
So anyway, Colorado calls and we're like, all right, what's the plan? They're like, well, we got a team for you in Oshawa that needs a player. And I know a guy, because back then it was who you knew.
Right.
And so next thing you know, that summer I'm off to Oshawa to play for the Generals. And West Point was really good. They were good about me leaving because I had been drafted.
Right.
And it was kind of like, well, okay, now go make it. If you're going to leave, then go make it. Right. So we can at least use it as a recruiting tool, for sports.
What about, like, the experience? And I know it's probably the one place that's so much different than any other college experience. A normal college experience for a hockey player at Minnesota versus West Point,
right.
It's just a completely different animal.
100%. And so, like, my crazy stories going home to meet with my buddies were like, well, after taps, which was,
right,
which was your time to go to sleep.
Right.
I would sneak out and I would bring a boom box, which we weren't even really allowed, and I'd play Staying Alive. And me and the rest of the freshmen would come out in the hallway and dance for like 30 seconds till we could hear the upperclassmen running to get us in trouble.
Right.
And then we'd pack it all up and fake like we were sleeping. That was my crazy story. You know what I mean? Like
the
versus my buddy. Yeah, my buddy's
Saturday night we were here, there.
Yeah, they're like, yeah, I'm wearing a toga, I'm doing a keg stand, and I'm like, yeah, mine's not so good. But it was great because what it taught me was attention to detail. And I was a little bit of a smart ass. And so I had a lot of guys that would want to haze me because I was a freshman. I'm playing a core sport is what they call them. And therefore I'm allowed to eat more calories than even a junior that's not in a core sport.
Okay.
And
they track your calories.
Oh yeah. It's based on how much, you're going to burn. And then you're only allowed so many chews. You're only allowed, like it's a big deal when you're a freshman.
Wow.
They're paying attention to, how you're eating, how you're putting your silverware down. You're announcing the food, your X amount of chews, and you got a small window to eat all this, but you only get so many. You know what I mean? Like
at first, I was like chews. I was like, I thought maybe like actually like
no, like Paul Korea, like how many times you can chew your food.
Wow,
that is some next level stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's so you don't get your mouth full of whatever.
We went when I was with the Philadelphia Flyers. We went and we did some practices at West Point and sat with the cadets and ate with them, and they were so happy to sit with us because I think they were like it was a relaxed atmosphere where usually
they could talk.
It's like you get the hell out of there. Like it's like I don't know how many, like maybe less than 10 minutes, and you're like have to be done your food and
it's a crazy amount of time. And
do you feel that some of that has carried over into your adult life?
Oh yeah, 100%. Not so much the stuff like that. Right. That's to break you down and build you back up.
Sure.
Which is very needed, right? Like you're going to leave there and you're going to have a command of men who are going to live and die based on your command. So all that stuff is needed and important. And I wish today's youth had to go through that to make them tougher. And so I'm grateful. But a lot of what carries over is the attention to detail and why it's important.
Got it.
Because coming from there, my next coach was Bob Hartley, and he was Mr. Details, right? So it was easy for me, that transition, to kind of understand the importance of what he's talking about because I just did it at West Point. And so it was like, and plus, when you're getting hazed as much as I was, your room had to be spotless. Right. You had to know all your information. Your shoes had to be perfectly shined because if they're looking for any little thing to bring me in the hallway and get me doing push-ups, sit-ups, and whatever. So, by Christmas, my attention to detail was pretty good because they'd come in and they'd start searching the room looking for stuff, and I better have my ducks in a row. And so that really helped me, even to this day, understand like even the minute little details. And we talk about it as coaches all the time. Like when you watch enough video, there are so many goals that happen just like at less than an inch away from somebody's stick.
Sure.
And so it's a game of inches, just like most pro sports. So those attention to details make it good.
So you went from Oshawa to Hershey, and you mentioned Bob Hartley, who you played for there. Jay Feaster, was he there as well?
Yeah.
And was Dave Mishkin?
Yes.
Was he there as well?
Yeah, both of them.
I was going to put that together,
6 degrees of separation.
I know.
And you've coached Mac, right, at some point, and
in Nashville.
You definitely have some ties to the Tampa Bay Lightning organization. But you also, again, let's going back to the playing days, Colorado 7th round pick, 6'7" overall. You know what that is, right?
Unfortunately.
Okay. Kobe does too as a dad. We had to throw that in there, man. But again, I'm just curious, you had success in the NHL, but it seems like the coaching pedigree, the coaching aspect has always been like inside of you, right? You worked part-time with the Blue Jackets as a scout, but you were also a stockbroker at the same time. So like, again, FBI, hockey, coaching scout, stockbroker, again, how did that all kind of come into play to get you to the next level?
Well, when I retired and I wasn't quite ready to retire, I get a call from Columbus and I was like, oh, great. Like here's a team that needs a rebuild. Maybe they need a veteran. And Chris McFarland's like, hey, you interested in coaching? And I was like, oh, I guess I'm done. That's when you know you're done playing, when they start calling you for coaching.
Yeah.
And my dad was always a coach. He coached me my whole life. He coached fast pitch women's softball, like college football. Like he coached. And I got to grow up around that and see the impact that he always had made. And, I always look at it like this, and I'm not demeaning school by any means because I love school and I loved my teachers. But I can remember every single coach I had, and I can remember probably 80% of my teachers. And so the impact that you could have as a coach could be massive for the upbringing of these athletes, players,
Young
kids,
men, yeah,
whatever.
absolutely.
And so I understood its value by watching my dad. And so, and plus when we were playing, like the veterans were basically assistant coaches, right? Like this was before skills and all that stuff kind of came out. So you would grab, as a veteran, you'd grab a couple young guys. You know, I'd grab a TJ Oshie or a David Perron and would work on the wall with them or whatever I could teach.
Sure.
You know, because that's what the old guys did for me in Colorado. And it was just kind of, that's how it went. You know, and then we lost a little bit of that after the lockout in 04 and the veterans started disappearing and young guys started coming in. But that stayed with me my whole career. So jumping into coaching was pretty natural for me.
Sure.
And then, you know, life happened while I was coaching in Columbus. It was a great time. We made strides. We made playoffs by my last year. We won our first ever playoff game. And then I got a divorce. So, and my kids are pretty young. So I wanted to be a part of their lives and help raise them. Yeah. So I left hockey because you can't do both. Sure. You're going to lose custody and, you know, it's a messy deal. And so we went to Chicago and tried to start over for me. It was like, okay, well, I got to figure something else out because pro hockey's not going to work with custody and blah, blah, blah. So, so I went job hunting. I was going through divorce. There was it was dark times.
Sure, man.
And I even went, and I don't know how many people know this, but there was a time I was going door to door for AT&T.
Wow.
So, you know, you get 100 doors a day, and if you get one sale, like you get somebody to switch their package to AT&T, that's a win.
Wow.
And it was great. It was humbling, and it was perspective and everything and like that. And so I finally get to a point where I'm like, I need help. And before that, I was like, I'll do this myself. This is my problem. Yep. I made this mess. I'll get out of it. And then I realized I couldn't. And so I called my buddy from West Point, and I was like, hey, he's in the Wall Street world. And his name's Ian Weiner. He was also the reason I got drafted. He was the senior when I was a freshman. He was my center on my line. Okay. And he was an unbelievable passer, made my whole career. Yeah, exactly. And so anyway, I called him. I was like, hey, do you know anybody in Chicago that I could interview with, you know, just open a door for me to, and he's like, you know what's funny? He's like, I just lost my trader in Chicago last week. He's like, come work for me. He's like, get your licenses and then you can work out of the board of trade and you can be my stock trader out of Chicago. So.
And I mean, did you not love that?
It was unbelievable. It was the universe speaking, you know, cause it's funny because literally maybe that week it was raining, it was cold in Chicago and I was soaked and it like thunderstorm and I was like, okay, what else you got? Like I'm soaked, I'm cold, I'm going door to door.
The car comes by and the puddle.
It was literally like that where I was like, okay, like what else? Yeah. What else you got?
Yeah.
And then the universe was like, okay, fine, let's give him the real job.
Yeah.
And so anyway, the next 4 years was working with Wedbush out of the Board of Trade. And then we moved to Michigan and I started volunteering with NTDP, with John Robleski's team, which was the 01s. So the next year, my mentor that hired me and the other guy that trained me, Steve Beiser, they were both leaving Wedbush. So it was kind of my time to maybe look for a hockey job. And so I go in, I get a call from John Robleski. He's like, we got an opening here if you want to work with me at the NTDP. And it was perfect. Yeah. And again, the universe stepped in, threw me back into hockey. And then from there, Nashville.
And here you are now.
And here I am, yeah.
It's insane.
It's unbelievable.
I mean, you just never know, like I said, everybody's career paths and their, way of life, it ebbs and flows and there's all sorts of different meanings and everything. And it's been pretty remarkable that you've been able to pull out from each phase of life. Seems like you just have this great positive attitude that everything happens for a reason. What's the meaning of this? Let me find that. Let me own it. And then the next step will come. And
that's it.
Yeah.
That's a pretty remarkable story.
I got to admit, I was a little arrogant in the fact that I was like, I knew you were an interesting guy, interesting story. But deep down inside, just judging by a kid that was like just so invested in the Colorado Avalanche, Detroit Red Wing rivalry, and the players that you played with, that I was like, if anything, I just want to ask them about that, because it's just like that just whole thing. And then we kind of got talking about this Tampa Bay Lightning, Florida Panther rivalry, if that's kind of on the same like footing as at all. But I really would love to hear your perspective on some of your teammates you played with in Colorado, because
seasons,
Joe
right?
Sakic and Patrick Waugh,
The best of the best.
and then just like that rivalry is just like, it was something from, another planet, really. And hockey fans that watched it, watching Patrick Waugh fight, and the hits from behind, and the cups you guys won, the cups they won. It was just a remarkable time for hockey, I think.
It was the golden age, right? Like, and that's easy to say because we were involved in it, but it was so special. Like when you were in that dressing room and the schedule came out, like everyone would run to the board to see when we were playing Detroit.
Yeah.
And it would be circled. And I mean, literally circled. And it would sit in your stomach. It'd be like a month away, and you'd look at it and be like, oh, got that coming up.
Like Claude Lemieux, are you ready?
Yeah. Like but that's what it was like. And the good thing is, like in the belief that iron sharpens iron.
Yeah.
Right. They were a wagon too. And we had a wagon. So it wasn't just like a brawl. Like it was also the two of the best teams in the league. Right. So it was
a measuring stick.
Exactly. So you had to figure out how to traverse that part of it too, was like you needed to win the game, but you also, there was going to be some high physicality. There was going to be some dirty play. Like you didn't leave those games back then without some sort of, and I was on the tail end, but the stories and then the carryover that I got to be involved with, like you were bleeding almost guaranteed after that game.
Yeah.
You were, or if you weren't bleeding, there was internal bleeding,
right?
But it was somewhere, but it was such a special time to be a part of sport. And I took, I guess I didn't mean to take it for granted, but when you're in the middle of it, you don't really notice that it's special until you get out of it and realize that you've never gotten back to it until Florida happened here. And I was like, this feels a lot like that Detroit hatred, where it's like you're a little bit over the line hit, cross check, or whatever away from this thing just blowing up at all times. Yeah. And that was Colorado. But it was, like these guys were animals,
and you almost have the sense like it's like no matter if it was the first round, second round, third round, you guys met, it was like whoever won that series was going to win the Stanley Cup, which is, that's self-evident here in the last 6 years here.
Yes, exactly. And that's what happened, with when we in 2002, I want to say was the Statue of Liberty play, and we were up 3-2 before I think that happened. Yep. And then they won game 6-7 and went on to sweep whoever was next. Right. Like that was the conference final. Right. And then it was basically like you said, both teams knew that whoever won that series was going to win the cup that year. For sure. And they did. And but when you would gear up for those games, it would be like a week out, and guys would start practicing fighting. Guys would start.
Let's get over with the Chicago game and this Vancouver game, but like that one right there.
But that's what as much as you tried not to,
right?
There was no way not to, right? Like whatever games were in between that and the Detroit game they were there, and you focused on them at the time, but you were really getting ready for that game.
Sounds familiar, doesn't it?
So guys would have special sticks, like special pads. Like it was like something you had to be ready for.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it was so cool to have been a part of that, and then now be a part of this. Yeah. Because now I'm on the flip side. I'm on the coaching side, and I'm watching it, and I'm so grateful to have been a part of that because these are so rare.
Yeah.
Like I mean this kind of like anger, and I don't mean that in a good way, but it is in a good way because it's so rare that you hate another team as much as these two teams hate each other.
Love that.
It's awesome.
Well, let's fast forward because obviously, you signed here with Tampa. We know that Coop has been actively trying to get you here in this organization. He said he talked to you and interviewed you back in the draft in 2019. So he's obviously been after you for a while. But coming into Coop's system, how do you prepare for that? I mean, what does he expect you to bring to the table? What has he allowed you to implement? Obviously, last year we scored the most goals in the league last year, top 5 or 6 defensively. So there's room for improvement. But what What was it about you that Coop, you know, was so adamant of bringing you on?
You know, I think it a lot. I don't know if it's as much X's and O's or, you know, trying to score more or, you know, give up less. I think it's more about what I can bring intangibly. So off the ice, you know, in the meetings, you know, with the boys, you know, all that other stuff as well, you know, like penalty kill and that. But that's every coach. I think the thing that he wanted me for was my mentality and maybe, you know, my energy. And, you know, there's a little old school in the way I coach, but I'm tight with the players, but I have high expectations and we're honest and, you know, but there's a little bit of grit to it, you know, and trying to bring that out in some of these guys has been the fun part, right? Because it's in all of us. When you chose to play hockey past the age of 10, you knew you were going to lose your teeth.
Right.
At some point, you were going to have stitches. You were going to break something, right? Like, so there's a part of you that like signed that contract that knows it can play that style of game. Now, maybe you've scored a bunch of goals in between 10 and now, and so it's dormant, but I can hopefully bring that out in the guys and kind of wake that piece up where when this team was winning cups, they had that in Goudreau and Coleman and you know, they're a little bit more irascible style, right? They had short fuses and trying to get that out of like a Gonzo or, you know, you know, the guys on the fourth line. So Finley and Douglas and Gord, you know, it's in Gord when he eats a cereal, right? Like Gord wants to fight everybody right now, all the time, you know, but trying to get more of that out of the guys to get a little more, you know, a little more gumption into their life. You know, because it's not just something you turn on and off. Like there's something you have to embody, and trying to get them to do that a little bit more.
You definitely seem like the players coach. I mean, obviously that first episode of The Recharge, which I thought was great when Gabe and the crew mic you up, and again, it was very apparent that you are the players coach. Like you're just very relaxed with the boys. You know, the nicknames and giving them stick taps and just. I feel like that resonated very quickly too. Like, I mean, sometimes it takes a little while, as you know, like for a new coach to come in and kind of get established and situated, but it seems like you just kind of fit in right away.
Yeah. You mentioned too, I read something and I thought it was interesting. You said coaching feeds your soul. And I don't think I've heard many coaches like talk that way. So when you were getting into coaching and it's just like being a player, you know, everyone's got their own style and you kind of mentioned a little bit about your style, but how did you decide that was the type of style that you needed to be as your coach? And I know you mentioned your dad was a coach and he had a certain way of doing things, and obviously you've had mentors and different coaches along the way.
Tony Granato was another guy you mentioned.
Yes, and that's the kind of coach I wanted to be.
Okay.
Tony Granato was the coach I wanted to become because he was he was a player's coach.
Yeah.
But he was honest and fair. You know, so and to me, I had spent and Bob Hartley was the only reason I was ever in the NHL. I owe him my whole career, but he coached through fear, and that was fine. I was a soldier. I was the perfect guy for that.
Right.
But I didn't know if I could coach that way. You know, I could play that way all day, but I don't know if I could. It's not in me to be that person.
Sure.
So I'm like, maybe coaching's not for me because I can't coach like that. And then Tony Granato comes in and he's just a great human and he's happy and he's positive and he coached that way. And then it was more like, instead of doing it because I was afraid, I was doing it because I didn't want to let him down. And they're both really effective methods. And so I was like, that's the one I want. I want to do that one. And so then I go to Columbus and now I'm literally just retired. And I'm coaching like guys that I just played against last year, you know, which was a hard transition.
Right.
And Ethan Morrow was one of them, and Chris Clark was another. I fought both of them, and they both beat me up. Now I'm telling them they have to get in on the forecheck. You know what I mean? It's like, it's
you got to hold them accountable.
Yeah, I'm like, get in here. Yeah, they're like, settle down.
Yeah, right.
But anyway, I'm midway through my first year, and I'm meeting with the video coach, and I'll remember this for the rest of my life. And I was like, his name is Dan Singleton. And I was like, Dan, like, what do you think like I should do in this situation, Like I'm trying to, and he sits down, he's annoyed. And he's like, just be you. He's like, they hired you, not whatever this is that you're trying to be. He's like, they hired you as the person. So just be you. And then he went back to his work. And it was like the most powerful thing I'd ever heard because I was like, that's true. Like they hired me. If they don't like me, then what they hire me for? So what do I want to be? And that changed my whole coaching perspective because I was like, well, I'm going to coach how I would coach.
Sure.
And then I stopped worrying about what I thought Scott Arneal wanted me to coach like, or Scott Housen, or anybody for that matter, and just started coaching like me. And all of a sudden, everything clicked into place for me as a coach.
Wow.
And so, when I chose to be this style, it wasn't like a choice. It's just who I am.
Sure.
Like this is who I was as a player. It's who I am as a coach. It's who I am as a person. And as soon as you're genuine like that, everything that comes out of your mouth is true. And people flock to it, and players want to hear it, and you have a bigger impact because it's a higher vibrational message, right? Like when you're genuine, it's about as high as vibrational as you can get.
100%.
And if you get to a point where they love or they hate you, my old man used to say, "Fuck them if they can't take a joke."
Yeah.
But that's basically what you're saying to the world.
Right.
It's like here's what I am, and if you don't like it, that's good for you.
Sure.
But I don't care.
Right.
I'm just going to be me. And if you end up losing your job because you're okay losing your job because you're you.
Yeah, 'cause
right?
you didn't sell yourself short.
That's
right?
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have no regrets. So then after that statement, I started to become the coach I wanted to become. And then I've had the impact that I've had. But when I say that it feeds your soul, what I mean by that is that's what I was meant to do. I was meant to help these players like become the best version of themselves. And that I take into account off the ice as well. So I want to work on their foundation, their sleep, their nutrition, their relationships, their financial, get that all situated, and then work on their hockey. Because if any of this is messed up,
Right.
their hockey's going to struggle anyway.
Sure.
So when I see them have success, both off the ice and on the ice, like that fills me up as a human being. So that's what I mean when I say it's good for my soul.
That's amazing.
Because that's what I want. That's what I was born to do.
That's deep. So throughout a season, coach, we always hear the word adjustments. When you're coaching during the season, obviously we know practice elements remain part of the process, but are you focusing more on game by game adjustments, or are you like focusing on like cracks as they go, or like, face-offs? Obviously this season we didn't start out great, right? But we picked it up. So when you're making those adjustments in practices or throughout the season, what exactly are you adjusting? Is it specifics or is it game by game?
It's both, and a lot of it's big picture, right? Like, so the face-offs are big picture.
Right.
The guys being able to protect themselves, protect the puck. The skills that are important on a day-to-day basis. That's more big picture stuff. Mm-hmm. But then like going and playing against New York. New York plays X system, so this is going to work against them. So let's work on that.
Gotcha.
And then the same in Florida and so on. So you try and do a little bit of both, where it's like, okay, this week we're going to see 3 box and 1 team, so we know we can work on the umbrella for offensive zone and one-timers, right? And then if you're playing a man-on-man team, you're working on picks and you're working on protecting the puck and so on. So that's the little nuanced stuff that you work on week to week.
Got it.
And then the big picture stuff is like, okay, well, Douglas is 6'9". We need to teach him how to protect the puck with that body.
Sure.
Finner's 6'6". Same thing.
Got it.
Gonzo is a really good skill guy. James is a really good skill player. Like, we got to teach these guys, how to pass on the move, how to be shoulder check, whatever.
Sure.
Right. So you're practicing both things throughout the year with 70% of that being big picture stuff for the individual, like with the skills girls that are here now working with the boys, right? Like, you do a week of that, which this falls perfectly. Like, they will benefit so much from these 4 days working with these ladies on the small parts of their games that they'll then, apply in game, in practice. And then, the rest of their year will benefit from it.
Have you added any new figurines to the coaching arsenal?
No, I haven't. I have to figure what makes sense here first.
Sure.
Like that's something that comes with time, where you figure out, like, I knew that would work in Nashville because they were a bunch of 12-year-old kids. And most NHL players are, just like the coaches. But you got to figure, I knew that would work for them.
Sure.
And I have to figure out what works for this team before anything like that comes up. But the thing about this staff is they do stuff like that,
sure.
In other ways. So I got to step up my game a little bit, which I love, but it just makes the season shorter.
Okay. Well, before we get into our what we call highlight hot takes, I did want to touch on your dad a little bit, because you've mentioned him a lot, the Big Chief. You called him Frog. He was a world champion softball pitcher, 2 wins with the United States Olympic team at the Pan American Games in Winnipeg, where they won gold. Was also a salesman as well, and owns a Guinness World Record. Did I get all that pretty much right?
Yep.
So he was from this area. So like you were born here, but then you went and were raised in Minnesota.
Yes.
Why did Dad pick it up from here and go there when this obviously is paradise?
Well, because he was a stud, and he met my mom on a camping trip while she was down here, and she was 22.
Okay.
He was 42.
Oh my goodness.
So that's what I mean by stud. And her family's all in Minnesota.
Okay.
And so she was like, if we're gonna do this thing, I'm not leaving Minnesota. So it was easy for him to pick up and move to Minnesota. So I was raised in Minnesota, but I was raised Southern.
Gotcha.
In Minnesota.
Okay.
If that makes any sense.
Yes, it does.
Because he was, we're talking about a guy that was born in the 30s. Like he was born in 34. So his version of raising children was a little bit different than northern Minnesota. So I was definitely, and so were all my friends because of it, because he was the big chief. So if you were at the big chief's house, the rules were his.
How big is he? I mean,
it wasn't that. Like
he was stature.
He was 6, maybe 6'1", and by the time I was in it, he was in his 40s or whatever. By the time I was remembering him, he was obese and out of shape. He was a big drinker for a long time. But before that, he was just like a brick shit house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
He was like 230, 240, 6 foot, but like
big in presence.
Yeah, but in presence, he was 7 foot tall. Mm-hmm. He was larger than life. I always tell people, if you ever watch the movie Big Fish, if you've ever seen it, that was his life.
Yeah.
And he wasn't the one that ever told me the story. It was always his buddies.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you wouldn't believe what your dad did.
Yeah.
And he'd be like, don't tell him that one. But so that's how I knew they were true. But anyway, that was him.
Very cool, man. It's a very cool story of how you got here to Tampa. So we're very happy to have you. And so it's time for our highlight hot takes. These are literally just give us your thoughts, your opinions on these. And I'm going to start right off the rip because we had Tyler Johnson on a few weeks ago, and we asked him, and he had a very interesting take on his thoughts of scrapping the current NHL wild card format for playoffs and bring back the 1 through 8 seeding. What is your opinion on the current status, and what do you think of? And I will say this, Tyler threw something out there that was very unique, and that was he felt that the number 1 and number 2 seeds should be able to choose which team that they want to play out of the rest of the seedings, because then it's like, oh, well, we're coming after you, but if you're the other team, it's, oh, they chose us.
They chose us.
Right, so I thought that was a very interesting take. But what's your take on the current format, and would you like to see things change?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy to say that, especially in our division, having to go see, you could be 1 and 2 and still see, or, 2 and 3 and still see, or, Florida in the first round.
Right.
Which, I don't think is great for hockey either. I think you don't want to see Florida Tampa in the first round, even though it's very entertaining. You'd like to see them further down the road.
Sure.
Or, leading up to that rivalry, meeting in the conference final like Detroit and Colorado used to. So I guess I'm a little biased that way. I would lean towards Johnny's viewpoint for that reason.
Okay.
So
you would scrap it.
I would.
Okay.
Best player you ever played with?
God, that's a tough one. I'll say Peter Forsberg, because I got to see and not like Joe Sakic, Rob Blake, Ray Bork, Patty Waugh, like unbelievable. But I was his roommate on the road, and I would see him basically have to crawl. His ankle and his foot were so bad. He'd have to crawl to the bathroom and crawl back. And then that night he had 2 and 2, 8 minutes in penalties.
Reverse hit everyone.
That's what I mean. Like, that's why I love the way he played, because he played the game in all the facets. Like he could have just been a skill guy, but it wasn't in him to just be a skill guy. He wanted to run you over and dangle you at the same time. And he carried like the Sweden country on his back with such grace and humility. Like I'm biased because I got to see him so much firsthand, and how he battled through his injuries and how he played the game. But he'd probably be the best that I've seen.
Okay. And finally, because I'm sure you've seen a lot as a player and a coach. What's the best prank you've ever seen pulled off?
That's a good one too. We had, without naming names,
Yeah, keep the
foam. We had a car like a filled up with foam. Was a good one. We had the keys in the fishbowl because nobody knew whose keys were whose. Took them all. Like, I don't know who has the time to do these things, but somebody that was injured took everybody's car keys, put them in a bowl. Took us like 45 minutes to sort it all out because it wasn't like bleep bleep.
right. No.
Right.
It's like the key.
It was like the keys back then, so you actually had to try it, and nobody had whatever.
Yeah.
But probably my favorite was we had in Boston, because of course everyone knows a Boston cop. The cops pulled the bus over, arrested a young guy after a night out that we knew that this young guy would have no recollection of whether he did this thing or not. And then jumped in the cop car, like full station, the whole thing.
Wow.
Yeah. That was probably the best one.
That's severe.
It is severe, but that was how we did things back then. It was like nothing was off limits.
Imagine, like, you're literally like, this is
Next level.
That's the next level.
That,
man.
yeah, oh yeah, that's
All
next
right.
level.
That's awesome. Dan, thank you so much for taking the time. Again, we know you guys are super busy right now. And again, being that it's Veterans Day, we felt it was the right thing to do to have you on. And we really are looking forward to the remainder of this season and to see where we're going to take things. And we're really happy to have you here in Tampa.
Yeah, thank you so much. Like I said, it's an honor to be here, and it's the best organization in the league. So
Heard from a pro right there, ladies and gents. So thanks again to our friends at High Life for powering another episode of the Bolts Block Party. And Kobe and I will catch you next week. Thanks for tuning in.